Good morning, LinkedIn Live. How are we doing? Happy Friday. How's your week been? Good morning, Dominique,
Good
officially.
morning.
Thank you
Good
so much
morning.
for joining us. We've almost had like a mini episode before we started,
This is why
which
we're
is always great.
smiling.
Yeah. And and I must share, we were just talking about how, when it comes to D&I and the changes, because obviously, I've known Dominique now for a few years through the Black Talent Awards, which we'll get onto, but we were talking about how things don't always change overnight, right? And sometimes it takes a while. So, Dominique, thank you again so much for joining us. So, for those that don't know, please do check out Dominique's profile. Dominique is the Global Trade Strategy Director
That's
for
right.
Merlin Entertainments Group. I said that without reading as well.
Oh, wow. We have known each other a long time.
We have, and we were just saying off air that sometimes, when you're in the work and you're maybe at those early stages of making change, it can be easy to get disillusioned and think that things aren't changing, because these things don't change overnight, do they?
Not at all. And it takes a number of years, and it definitely takes the whole of an organization to have the intent and the desire for that change. And,
Yeah,
over the, you know, 5 or 6 years that I've been very focused on in this area, I've
yeah,
definitely seen the change happening and feeling it more now, which I think is the difference. I feel
yeah,
the change around me rather than
yeah.
I'm involved in the change. So I think that's a big difference.
Yeah, it's almost a bit like, there's that saying, isn't there? Like, you know, conscious competence, unconscious incompetence, etc. And there's something about, we were sort of talking about when it's no longer a thing. When DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is no longer a thing, and it just is the way that the business works. Almost, and people maybe aren't even using that term, but they know that, this is just the way now that we do business. We look for
Yeah.
the best talent, we promote and hire, etc. Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
absolutely. And it is that moving from it being a thing to thinking about how do you create inclusion? How do you ensure everyone has that sense of belonging
Yeah,
rather than there's a
absolutely.
strategy, which obviously you
Yeah,
need to kick these
yeah,
things off, and you're doing check-ins with a strategy.
yeah,
It's much more about measuring engagement, measuring inclusion,
yeah,
getting a sense of how much people belong and have a
yeah,
voice in your organization as
yeah,
well, which is
yeah,
really important.
yeah. Because that's the thing, is it? Once it's actually becomes part of the culture, you're not then needing to measure it almost against the scorecard. I mean, obviously there is still the
Yeah,
monitoring, but
yeah.
you're right. So let's get into this. So good morning, everyone. If you're watching it live, Friday morning here in the UK, just gone 8:30. If you're watching it on the replay, thank you so much. Do say, good morning. Ask any questions of Dominique if you're watching us live. The comments have been a little bit glitchy the last couple of weeks, so hopefully they'll be fine. But this morning we're talking about the why of diversity, equity, inclusion. There's been a lot of noise lately, a lot of anti DEI rhetoric. I won't name that certain billionaire social media owner. I won't give him a shout out this morning. But we're going to be talking about the why of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as I mentioned, Dominique works for Merlin Entertainments Group, and really has been one of the key sort of, sponsoring partners, headline sponsors and partners from day one. And one of the things that, if Denise Myers were on, Denise founder, she always sort of says, Merlin were there from day one. Like Merlin were the first in there, right? So we have to give you, a shout out for that. Let's talk about. I want to start when it comes to the why of D&I. I want to start off with the business case around D&I. And, for those that are in this space, they know that we often talk about the moral case, as in it's the right thing to do,
Mm.
versus the business case, as in, because actually organizations tend to make more money, more revenue from innovation, etc., which you must know as a result of being strategy. Have you got a view about which one's more important, or which one, it's better to start with? What are your thoughts on that? I'm really intrigued.
I mean, there's a mass of research and data around this, particularly McKinsey, who've probably
Yeah,
been the spearheads of looking at the why and the kind of commercial benefits, if you like,
yeah,
of creating a more diverse and inclusive environment within your workplace. And those results over the last maybe 7 years, I think they've been running their programs, have been conclusive. It is, you will
yeah,
have more profitability ultimately if you have a more diverse workforce, and that's diversity of thought, of creative abilities, it's about lived
Yeah.
experiences. And an organization like Merlin, everything that we do, our entire enterprise is about
Mm.
the people who visit our attractions. And we're
Yeah.
a great believer that the people who serve in our attractions and work through our attractions should represent the people that are enjoying the attractions. How can you
Yeah.
get in the mindset of what someone else wants unless you have those thoughts and voices in your organization? So
Yeah.
I think I think commercially it makes total sense. It's
Yeah.
evidence based. I think as well in terms of creating that sense of belonging and um, enjoyment in your job. Being in an environment where there's lots of people like yourself isn't necessarily the most engaging environment. It's much more about having all those different ideas and
Mm.
people with completely different backgrounds, lived experiences. Um, Diversity, a completely different view on the world as well, which
Yeah.
is also as important. That creates for environments, it creates for all organizations um, that listen more.
Yeah, yeah. Because when you were talking about like the commercial case, particularly around, say, for example, the creativity and all of that. And I saw a post on LinkedIn recently, but I can't remember the detail of it. But there is something about, we know that as we tend to get older, we there is a danger that we almost like lose those elements of creativity because we kind of get into our routines and our patterns, and we lose that sort of childlike play and the creativity.
Yeah,
So actually, creating workplaces where you have different environments and things sparking off, people bouncing off each other because they bring their differences, that does make for a more interesting and fun place to work as well, doesn't it? I think.
yeah, and that's what we do. We
Yeah.
create memories for people. We're not selling a hard product, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite intangible. You
Yeah.
know, having an experience at a theme park, but what we do is kind of plant a seed in somebody's life cycle, and that memory
Yeah.
is grown from that, and they
Yeah.
refer back, remember when we, and so we see that as a really important thing that we're
Mhm.
part of, and it's got to be right, and to
Yeah.
create an amazing place where you are totally guest centric, you have to have representation
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
guests.
Yeah, and you sort of said about selling, experiences and when, remember when, and the one thing, obviously that you bring to the awards, as well as your sort of like partnership and all of that. But I never forget that first year of the awards when, we're very fortunate and very blessed to be able to have a waxwork in the Black Talent Awards. And that first year when people went up the escalators in Edgbaston Stadium and the lift opened and they saw waxwork of Barack Obama, like the look on the faces was just, and it
No.
was exactly what you were just describing. That remember when that lift opened and Barack
I
Obama
know.
was stood there. It wasn't the
And,
real
and
Barack,
and
but
people
yeah, it's
take,
amazing.
obviously they take lots of pictures and lots of selfies, and when you get into year two, people are anticipating who's going to be there.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
figure are you going to be bringing this
yeah.
year? And they'll come to me on the evening and give their feedback of whether that's a good representation of that person.
Really?
So I have to really think about it. Who am I bringing? Who's going to be there? But like the talent in Madame Tussauds, the people who create these figures are,
Yeah.
it's just beyond
Yeah, and
beyond
I guess
your
the
imagination.
representation you have to have in those teams as well to do that sort of work, the creative work around,
Absolutely.
the waxworks themselves must be quite a diverse team. Yeah.
Yeah, and and working with those people who are the figures when we're choosing
Yeah.
which figures we want to have. Again, who's popular, but they might not have a legacy popularity. It might be
Yeah.
today's popularity. So we do intense research. We ask our guests, we ask our
Yeah.
customers who are coming in, and that's where you get that diverse thought. So it's
Yeah.
not just looking inwardly as an
Yeah.
organization, it's saying you're going
Yeah.
to enjoy this. Who do you want to be
Yeah.
there? And this year bringing Drake, I think that, I mean, for me that figure particularly blows me away. It's almost spooky like because it's so like him.
It's very
um
realistic.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, this week we launched in India a new figure, and and just watching the videos, I know which one is the figure, but you can get so consumed in
Yeah.
how the reality and how
Yeah.
realistic something is.
Amazing. And let's talk about so that there's then the other side of the business case, which is the moral case in terms of this is
Mm,
the right thing to do, whether that, around whether you've got values around social justice or just, our workplaces are in a certain community that has a certain demographic, it should reflect that community. What are your thoughts on, is it easier to get uh, leadership teams and hiring managers more bought into the commercial case or it's the right thing to do? What's your experience of that, or just what's your take on it?
I think over the years that I've been working with my colleagues on this, I think initially the most natural place for people is it's the right
Yeah.
thing to do, because
Okay.
they can associate with
Hmm.
what does that make me feel. You can give them
Yeah.
examples of, whether it's them, whether it's their children, whether it's their grandchildren. How would you feel
Yeah.
if these things happened in their life cycle? So it's easy to connect with the emotional side,
Yeah.
but in an organization, it has to make business sense. So it's
Yeah.
it's bringing that kind of more data driven
Yeah.
business case, but supporting it by this is the right thing to do. And for us,
Yeah.
we are a global entity, and we've got 144 attractions
Yeah.
worldwide. We Lots of our attractions are placed in very dense ethnic environments,
Yeah.
particularly in the States.
Yeah.
But also here in the UK, we've got a cluster of attractions in the Midlands.
Yeah.
And again, we look at the census data around where we are, and that's the
Yeah.
minimum benchmark we
Yeah.
would look at and say we've at least got to be representing at that level,
Yeah.
and then grow from there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and then ensuring that you have that environment that makes people want to stay. You can
Yeah.
have lots of talent coming into the funnel, but if you don't
Yeah.
then really live and breathe this,
Yeah.
they're not going to stay.
Yeah.
No one will, irrespective of which category of diversity they
Yeah.
belong to. They're not going to want to be in that
Absolutely.
organization.
Yeah. Interestingly, a couple of things that you said there, and I think, for some people that are listening to this, either live or on the replay, they might be thinking, I didn't know Merlin were in the States, but that's just, because I think a lot of people don't realize how
Yeah,
global, Merlin actually is. But actually, when you were talking about the right thing to do and maybe the journey that people go on, there's something about, and I think to get people kind of bought, especially, sort of leadership teams or people making decisions, to get them bought into D&I, you have to have the head and the heart. I
you
think
do.
maybe the heart is this is the right thing to do. This is about fairness, it's about equity, equality. And then the head is probably where the business case thing
Yeah,
comes in as well, doesn't it? So you
yeah,
kind of need both, don't you?
you do, and you have to have enough people lent into this area that will support and sponsor those people and
Yeah,
showcase the talent that
yeah,
the diverse
yeah,
agenda is bringing, the diversity agenda is
yeah,
bringing, because otherwise you can go too far into this as the norm, and then the energy behind it is lost. So making
yeah.
sure that you do have a scheme, which we do. We have a sponsorship scheme where we can put our
Mm,
arms around those people who just need that little bit more of a lift and guidance and demonstrate their talent. And we've in our communication from a global perspective, we've got to communicate a lot all the time, and every week we've got communication in it, and in that, bringing that different talent to the table when we're doing our kind of live links with the rest of the company,
yeah,
ensuring that each person around each different um, category, if you like, of person
yeah.
has a voice.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can see a comment on, for some reason, the comments aren't coming through up to the screen, but I can see a comment from Jill. Morning, Jill. Thank you for joining. So Jill's put a comment here, Dominic, I'd love to get your take on this. So she says, my concern is that a focus on the business case can create cynicism and potentially devalues the moral case, and also increases the burden on the diverse individuals.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Um, I haven't experienced that
Yeah,
within Merlin, but I do think in the same way that we have to think about census of an area, we have to think about how we create an environment of belonging for every single person.
Yeah.
We have to talk the language of a business as well. And
Yeah.
sometimes the
Yeah.
language of the business is the data. And particularly when you're working with C-suite executives, they want to see the holistic view of this. And it would be an amazing place if we could just lead with our
Yeah.
hearts, but we have
Absolutely.
to speak the language of the business at the
Yeah.
same time. So I haven't experienced it within Merlin, but I appreciate what she's saying.
Yeah.
You could get too embroiled in the strategy and the numbers and the data, but
Yeah.
it's that, really you have to just have that as an underlying measurement of progress, but not
Yeah.
have it the subject matter of everything you talk about
Absolutely.
in and
Yeah.
around this area. But sometimes it's a catalyst that gets you
Yeah.
to get that C-suite lent into this.
Yeah, absolutely. She's thank you, Jill. Jill's on a roll, so she's left another comment. There is evidence that a focus on the instrumental value reduces the perception of the intrinsic value. Yeah, I think it's really interesting points, Jill. I think it's something that will,
Yeah.
potentially, Jill. Maybe I have to get you back on another live to
Yeah.
to talk about that. 'Cause it's something Jill and I talk about as well. Of this, I
Yeah,
wanted to,
and it's not
yeah,
an easy subject. That's the
yeah,
whole point of this. It's not,
yeah,
there's no kind of simplistic route or a formulaic
yeah,
way in which um, you can make an organization inclusive.
yeah,
As I think it
yeah,
would just be, it's the right thing to do, we'll all do it.
yeah.
Jill is absolutely right. There are many, many layers to this.
Yeah, yeah. And then just linking on to you, we started getting on to you started talking about talent and all of that sort of thing. So let's just, obviously, as I've mentioned once or twice, maybe you are a sponsor for the Black Talent Awards. Why was it important for you to get involved? From day one, you were kind of like in there yourself and
Um,
Nick. Why was it important for you?
I think Denise is just a really good salesperson. I don't know, she negotiates well. I'm going to put it on Denise's head. No, in reality, the world's a really beautiful, colourful, diverse place, and as I've just said to the comment which Jill made, this is not a simple formulaic thing. You have to
Yeah,
have many, many supporters. It really does take a village, and I think, and I use that term very intently because
yeah,
it's about the community around you. And I think what Denise was able to do was demonstrate how we could get much more involved in the village rather than this
yeah,
Merlin lensed focused and energy. And
yeah,
that's what she brought to the room. And from day one of talking, I loved the fact that everything around the Black Talent Awards is unapologetically about driving Black talent.
yeah, yeah,
Um, it takes out that awkwardness for me, and it definitely did in kind of the narrative I was able to play back in the business
yeah,
as to why I
yeah,
felt this was the right thing to do. It just took all that awkwardness away, and it definitely has opened Merlin up to a much wider network of people who
yeah,
also are massively passionate in this area. We're working much more in that kind of community environment. And I
mhm,
was talking to Denise yesterday with our big laundry list of exciting things we're trying to do for 2024. And I think that's the
yeah,
thing. And I think for anyone who's listening and wanting to understand more about how they could be involved and what the benefit for them of
yeah,
being part of the Black Talent Awards is, it is literally a doorway. That's all the awards is. It's
yeah,
amazing, wonderful celebration on the night of people's incredible achievement. But for you as a sponsor or an organization involved, it's a doorway, and you
yeah,
have to step through it and then explore
absolutely.
everything that's behind it. And that's, for me now, is the kind of really exciting stuff of, so what's the next thing we can do? How can we get involved in that? We're doing this, I want to be involved in that. And
Yeah,
it bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. So it definitely gives back. That's what I'm
yeah,
trying to say. It's not something
yeah,
that usually is a corporate sponsor of something.
mhm,
It's a profile piece. This is not a
yeah,
profile piece in any
yeah,
way. And you will get more out of it if you roll your sleeves up and
yeah.
dive through that door, you know?
Absolutely, and we love that. You're absolutely. This isn't. It definitely isn't a profile thing, and it isn't just about throwing a bit of cash in and forgetting about it. It's very much, I think the Black Talent Awards is very blessed to have, sponsors like yourself that literally do roll their sleeves up and get involved, in all kinds of ways. So it is amazing. Thank you for that, Dominique. I wasn't expecting you to do a sales pitch for a sponsorship,
It's
but
my
that's
job.
fine.
It's my job.
We'll take it. Somebody's commented, "Big up, Denise." See, that comment came through. I don't know where that's. Let me just. I don't know. I'm going to see whether I can get it on my phone. I'm having to
Yeah,
like
it's on your
dual.
thing. Yeah.
I'm having to like duel between the two. Big up, Denise. Of course, big up, Denise. And something you said there about it being unapologetically Black, because, especially around the anti-DEI sentiment at the
Yeah.
moment, a lot of it, especially coming out of the States at the moment, is very, very cognizant of the risks around, because of affirmative action and all of the controversy around that. So actually, that can make some organizations a little bit reluctant to, for example, to sponsor an event that's even got the word Black in it, and to focus an initiative or a program on, on individuals, from that kind of like that African Caribbean diaspora. So, why, from your perspective, what should organizations be thinking about when it comes to race-based programs, and why were you so comfortable to go with the Black Talent Awards?
I think it's about, obviously it's about the culture of the organization that you belong to. We're a global entity, and therefore you cannot, you can't step away from the tough stuff, and some of the things that that you get involved in this space are a bit uncomfortable and can be very gritty at times. And I think, if you truly want to represent as a global organization, you have to speak to the people around you. We're fortunate we do have really talented ethnic minority employees in our organization who are happy to speak up at all levels of our organization as well. And ask them, ask that question. How are you ask all people, are you comfortable that we're doing this? Actually, what really pleased me when we did join the first year of the Black Talent Awards, my co-colleague in America, who runs their kind of their task force there that's focused on DE&I, was like, how did you get involved in that? What kind of organization? How can I do this? And rather than, oh, that wouldn't work here, I'd be very uncomfortable, and in fact, there's little moments as well in each of these events that remind you that being bold sometimes is much more effective than being supremely strategic. You can be perfect in your strategy. Everything on paper can be, can ladder up to this wonderful statement of what you are and who you are. But it's in the doing that you really know whether any of that means anything or stands for anything. And at the last Black Talent Awards, I sat next to a colleague who is in our new business development, a lady called Morinike. Big up to you, Morinike, if you're listening. And it was the point at which, during the Black Talent Awards, that they started playing Afrobeats, and she's a really excitable person anyway, but she just went, I have never been at a conference where they play my music. And she was like almost ripping the table up to get on that dance floor. But that spoke to me more than anything else. Because that was, I'm passionate about this. I'm not living this life though. So she then gave me a little glimpse into what it means if you're in that space, if you are that Black talent in an organization. And I will take that with me in everything I do with this.
Do you know what? And you're not the first, person that's come along like a corporate table where the response of like the senior leaders, when they've seen, when the DJ, big shout out to DJ Mexi, right, if he's listening in, but when some senior leaders see the joy of their Black and other ethnic minority colleagues, when they hear the music play at the end of the night, and it's that celebration, and because dancing and music is a big part of sort of any sort of African and Caribbean celebration. There has to be dancing, right? There has to be. So and when when colleagues see the joy that, we're at a corporate event, you're with your bosses, and maybe your boss's boss's boss, and still this, Afrobeat is playing, and you're going to get up and you're going to shake a leg. And
Yeah.
I remember seeing you on the dance floor, I think
Oh,
till
yeah.
quite late.
I was on there till the very last minute of the night.
Yeah.
And even that journey for me,
Yeah.
I, I don't think you can discount how much you grow from these things on a
Yeah.
personal level,
Yeah.
how you develop on a personal level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's not something that you're the conductor of an orchestra back in there. You're right in the mix, in the middle of the dance
Yeah.
floor often.
Yeah.
And just the amount of people that you get to know as well,
Yeah.
that's the wonderful thing. And
Yeah.
you might go to some
Mhm.
other event and people are coming up going, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I can't believe you're here. So I think
Yeah.
that, growing, developing, building your network, leaning in on people who say, oh,
Yeah.
I'm involved in this. You think, great, you are my person for this thing that I'm
Absolutely.
trying to do. And
Yeah.
that network of people together, I think, is how really we tackle any of
Yeah.
these issues, and we lean
Definitely.
into
Yeah.
each other when things are tough, because sometimes it's very
Absolutely.
tough in this space.
Yeah.
And there's enough people to say, do you mind if I just have a conversation with you about something that
Yeah.
I'm experiencing right now? So I think
Yeah.
that's the important thing.
Yeah. And I'm really pleased that you said about uncomfortable conversations, because often conversations about race can be quite uncomfortable,
Yeah.
actually. And, especially for us Brits that don't like uncomfortable conversations
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
they can be uncomfortable. Let's lead on to, just in the final few moments, what, what tips have you got for organizations that maybe, people listening to this thinking, we're not clear as an organization on what our why is, why we're doing this, it maybe feels a bit tick boxy and nobody's sure what the reason is. What can they do to get clearer on their why?
I think first and foremost, it's understanding what culture you have and measuring if that's the culture that you want to have. What kind of who are you serving is really an important measure of this as well. Um, are you getting um, to the heart of some of your problems quick enough, solving
Yeah.
things quick enough? Because if we have lots of people in an organization all lent into a strategy but all with the same lived experiences, you're only going to look at things with one view. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes those other people to go, actually, let me just throw my view in on this. So I think if you're in the definitely if you're in the creative space, you won't survive. And I think that's an
Yeah.
underpinning thing. Companies will not survive in the future. They won't have enough sustainability in people if they
Mm.
don't lean into this area. And
Yeah.
that's that should put a chill through anybody and
Yeah.
make them think, how do I make sure I'm doing something around this
Yeah.
space?
Yeah, you heard it here. You've been warned. Dominique has given you that warning. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a Matthew Syed gives a
Mm,
fantastic, example of that, and in his book Rebel Ideas. But he talks about, there's a really short video that is done with the Royal Society of Arts, where it's, if you put 10 people in a room, you ask them all to come up with 10 ideas. How many ideas do you have? And some people think it's going to be 100, but he says actually, if all 10 people think the same, you've actually probably got 10, right? And
10
that's the
at the
that's the
most.
thing about, yeah,
Mm,
you need to get more people in so that you can get,
yeah,
the 100 ideas, that multiplier effect.
yeah,
So no, that's brilliant. And I love what you said about data in terms of the measuring, measuring how your people are feeling. And you talked earlier in the conversation about the demographics. So you rely very heavily on the census data. So I would say,
mm,
if you're an organization, I know that I think Sky do this in terms of one of their targets is to look at where their work locations are and look at the demographics in that
mm,
area and say,
yeah,
well, actually, our workplace should represent that area in theory.
absolutely.
The other thing I say, depending on your sector, look at how many people are graduating,
Yeah,
for that particular discipline. So there's data all around that can help you
absolutely.
figure out the why and help set reasonable
Yeah.
targets. Yeah.
And think about, I mean, that's a really good point about, look who's graduating, but look at the education establishments in and around your
Yeah.
different locations. I mean, for
Yeah.
us, we're all over the place. We have a head office in London, but apart from that, everything else is regionally based all around the
Yeah.
world. Look at those colleges of further education and those educational establishments, and find out, do they have faculties that feed into the subject matter that you're trying to
Mm,
deliver? Get in there and talk to those people, because very often an organization has this kind of corporate marketing spin on who they are. Quite rightly, we've got to get out there and showcase ourselves,
mm,
but it doesn't really talk to the kind of the essence and the heart of the business,
yeah.
and showcase everything. And I last year I did some work with Denise at University College Birmingham, and we did some focus groups about what people thought of Merlin, and
Mm,
what's their view on it, and how well do you know the different brands, which is what most people connect with.
yeah.
And they knew Warwick Castle, and they knew Alton Towers, and they know Cadbury World. But when we talked about what jobs do you think, because these were people coming up to finishing their courses in hospitality, so it was a real
Yeah.
like for like,
Right.
and they talked a lot about the frontline jobs, but they didn't know that
Mm,
you could be a lawyer in Merlin, that you could be, an accountant, that we even have
yeah.
paramedics in our company, and nurses, because
Mhm.
a theme park is like a small village. It's more like a small town, some of the
Right.
theme parks. So we've got
Yeah.
to have all of those roles and
Yeah.
jobs.
Wow.
And sometimes it was, and that really again opened my mind to, we need to
Yeah.
do a lot more at
Yeah.
this root level. And then we're very fortunate, we have an amazing early careers team, so when these people enter the company, they have someone and somewhere to anchor to, and they then give them that nurturing platform to help them fulfill what they're going to do. It's quite a scary thing, joining a company of 30,000 employees,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you do feel like it's little me. I've just started, I've just left college. So, again, organizations have to think about why they're doing this, how they're going to do it, but how they sustain that
Yeah.
and create that sense of belonging, because
Yeah.
it falls off a cliff if you don't have that full
Yeah.
loop in your environment.
Yeah, amazing. Dominique, that's just a perfect place to end. Honestly, Dominique, you've been a gift. This has been a gift this morning. Thank you so much. It's been a real treat and a real blessing. So thank you again for your time. Thank you everyone that's watching. There's been a lot of reactions and comments and things. That's been absolutely fantastic. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for taking your time out to do that. Dominique, Freudian slip. Dominique, thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me, Cheryl. Always a pleasure.
Perfect.
Always a
No
pleasure.
worries. Everyone have a great weekend.
Take good care.
Bye.